Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please take a seat. On behalf of Suzanne, Joanna, Michael and family, I'd like to extend a warm and sincere welcome to each of you here this morning. The family certainly wishes to express their thanks for your presence. They are honoured that you would put aside these few moments to celebrate with them Ken's life. The family are also thankful for the well wishes and support that many of you have extended over the past few days. The impact that Ken has had in so many lives has been attested to by the sheer volume of phone calls, the flowers, the visits, the messages of condolence the family have received this week. And Suzanne assures me that the couriers have set their vans to autopilot. Such has been the regularity of the flower deliveries to their house. Suzanne's also instructed me that, or at least informed me, that she hasn't been hugged as much in her entire life as she has in these last 4 or 5 days. And Suzanne, I suspect the hugs haven't ceased just yet either. A couple of general notices before we proceed any further. If you didn't sign the register when you came in this morning, please make an effort to do that before you depart today, so there is a record of your attendance here. If you haven't already, please now take the time to turn off any cell phones and electronic devices that may cause distraction. And thirdly, at the conclusion of the service, everyone is invited to the small gym to enjoy some fellowship and share some memories over a hot drink and indulge in 1 or 2 more of Ken's very favourite chocolate biscuits. I suspect that, like my heart this morning, yours is filled with a great sense of loss at Ken's passing. While death is an unavoidable part of life, that reality does little to soften the crushing blow that the loss of a loved one delivers. And while we're shrouded in sorrow today, there is also much to remember and quietly cherish. Today is certainly about starting to come to terms with our grief, but it's also about allowing ourselves to celebrate the life of a man we both knew and loved on varying levels. Through our tears, then, let's celebrate the life that Ken lived in our midst, a life that wove itself in and through ours. Let's celebrate those memorable moments we shared together, the joys and the sorrows, and let's celebrate the love that we mutually divulged. Today we mourn our loss, but we also reminisce and rejoice in all that we gained because of Ken's presence and input in our lives. Today, as we share our tears and laughter, we have great consolation that where Ken is, in heaven's glory, there is none of the former, no tears, and an abundance of the latter, a lot of laughter. To begin the process of reminiscing and reflection, I'm going to momentarily call on Joanna and Michael Bishop to share some of their thoughts and recollections of their dad. But first, I guess, an observation from me. Having spent more than half of my life educating young people, I have learned that often the best gauge of a man is the quality and the character of his children. Joanna and Michael are impressive people, and to me their lives speak volumes about the character of Ken, both as a man and as a father. Joanna and Michael.
Over the past week, our family have spent many hours retelling stories and reminiscing about our dad. As children of 2 teachers, we were lucky to spend all of our school holidays with our parents, and both being geographers meant we spent a lot of our childhood travelling around. I don't believe there could be many places in New Zealand that I haven't visited or driven through. This passion has inspired us in our lives, with both Michael and I studying geography at university. I have early memories of being a daddy's girl and have vivid memories of Dad twisting my pigtails into curls. Years later, I blamed him for my curly hair.
I had many names for Dad. Big guy, big man, big fella, Kenny G, and Dad, of course. Dad nearly always referred to me in one way. Bud. Hey bud, how are you bud? What's new bud? Always the same. If I was not listening, however, it was always Mike. He knew I hated being called Michael, and Dad would always get mum off my back when she said so. especially when she was like, Michael, Michael. I always thought she sounded like the lady off the cat ad, Henry, Henry. We always rolled our eyes in unison.
On that note, Dad was always the one I told if I did something and I wasn't sure how Mum would react. Or in fact, I knew she wouldn't approve. An example of this was the time I decided to buy a kitten. My flat did not allow pets, and Mum had told me many times not to get a pet because they would have to look after it when I went overseas. Anyway, I got a cat, and that night I told Dad. About a week later, I visited Mum and Dad and mentioned the cat. Mum turned around saying, "What?" But Dad backed me up with, "Yeah, that was last week." I will add now that I have actually given the cat to Mum and Dad many times since, and this year I gave them their grand cat on a more permanent basis.
Dad was also an avid sports and cultural lover. This was evident in his day-to-day viewing of sports. And watch out if you try to change the TV off sport. You would think he was asleep and try to take the remote. But right at the last moment, he would open his eyes and say, "I was watching that," even though he'd been snoring seconds before. He was always a great supporter of his children's sport, and that was not just the biological ones. I remember many badminton trips away with the manager from Howe, and the relief to see Dad taking the mickey out of her the next day. This included funny face impersonations and jokes. This was a great reflection of the light-hearted personality and easygoing nature Dad had.
Dad was always keen for us to excel in geography. I remember being in third form, which is year 9, when Dad started tutoring me in school cert geography. There were many evenings when we had lessons from Dad. There was one day I was in class and my teacher told me something that was the opposite of what Dad had taught me. I was horrified about this and told her it was wrong. Yes, I was that student. So she called in the other geography teacher who backed her up. Well, Dad and I let it go, but we were both very happy at the end of the year when school certificate proved Dad and I correct.
The flash red boat, the new, sleek, expensive-looking red boat, was Dad's newest toy and his pride and joy. Sometimes me and Joe thought his was his new favourite child. Before this, we had the brown beast, big, bulky, and indestructible. But during the time Dad owned both these boats, he was reluctant to let anyone else drive. Probably only Russell was allowed to drive it. So he would not let us tow or back the boat or do anything into the lake at all. Over the past many years, he slowly relinquished his many roles with the boat. And this began when he started teaching us all the things we needed to know. What speed to drive, how to tow, how to look, how to drive the right direction. I would like to say it was a relief to obtain this mantle, but I thought, about bloody time. Our times in Wanaka were often our most special, due to the time we could spend with our family and friends. Summers were never long enough, as we all know, but it was the memories made and the friendships shared that mattered. These stories will live in our family's memories for the rest of our lives, especially when we think of Dad and reflect.
We have some fast facts about Dada. He went to a course on delegation, but we thought he should have taught the course.
To drive the boat, you had to pass the Ken Bishop driving test. Only Joe and I passed this.
If you hugged him, you had to be careful not to mess up his hair. He even had a shelf just for his comb to sit on.
Dad was a master proofreader. Even if something was due the next day, he would stay up late to help.
Dad and I had to be on the same team for sports or games because World War III would have started otherwise.
Dad was never wrong or sorry. He always saw he was right. When on road trips, he always had to be the lead car, without fail.
He was the most amazing role model and I loved spending time with him and will always have the memory of him walking me down the aisle last week. I believe he held on to be able to do that.
You were the funniest, most caring and loving father a son could have, as all your adopted sons would agree.
I love you, Dada.
You'll be forever in our hearts. We love you. Sorry, momentarily. We also now have a message from one of Dad's adopted sons, Sebastian Festoff. He was living with us in 2006. He was going to King's High School and has never left our family. So this is what he would like to say to Ken. Dear Ken, my dad from the other side of the world. There isn't a day I'm not thinking about New Zealand and my time in our family. There are so many happy memories you gave me. I would not ever be able to list them all. I really miss the times we spent in the truck, driving to and back and home from school. We sang together. Sometimes you gave me a pep talk when I needed it. Sometimes you even yelled at me. You took care of me like a dad would do, like my own dad would do. The first time you called me your son was in your office. I was sitting in the front of your desk and we had lunch together, as we did most school days. Mr. Frost came in and noticed me sitting there again. Now, normally only kids who got in trouble had to sit and talk to you during the lunch break. He immediately started yelling at me. Before I really knew what was happening, you got up out of your chair, telling him to leave your son alone. We were just having lunch. You really stood up from your chair. If you didn't have to, You really stood up, sorry. Except if you were particularly cross with someone and wanted to let them know the amount of trouble they were in. That moment, this second, I will never forget. It was a moment I realised I really am part of your family. You took me in. At dinner time, you often sat there and just listened, until suddenly you made a really funny comment or did something. You were more observant and you always listened first. It is one attribute I learnt from you. In our hearts, you will always be with us, making the funny comments and be the fair, guiding dad you were. I trust you'll be looking down on all of us from heaven now, even though you might still refuse to go in, since your boat is still waiting to be driven. I love you, Dad. Seb.
Thank you, Joanna and Michael. I suspect, but I'm not sure, that the two of you know how proud your dad was of you. I was reacquainted with Joanna and Michael last Friday just before Joanna's wedding, and I greeted them like long-lost friends. I think Michael was actually wondering, who is this guy and what is he on? Because I behaved in such a familiar fashion. But the reason why is I actually spent a lot of time in Ken's office over the last decade, talking to him, and invariably our conversations would turn to our children. And I want you two to know that he would glow when he would talk about you both, and he would share with me your successes to the point where I kind of felt like I was partly responsible for them. So I apologise for my over-familiarity, but I do want you to know how much he loved you and how much I enjoyed hearing about your successes. So thank you. It was a fitting and a beautiful tribute this morning. I would now like to ask the Royal Dunedin Male Choir to perform several pieces. We'll be treated to this special performance, and I understand Ken was an integral part of this group, a first tenor, which I don't understand overly, but I understand they are reasonably rare, and he was very good at it. So, gentlemen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Still King. Watching them be in my